Today's guest is Jerre Stead. Over the course of his career, Jerre has served on 37 public company boards and led some of the world's most recognized corporations. He's known as the head coach type of leader who transforms organizations by focusing on people, purpose, and performance. But Jerre's story doesn't stop with corporate leadership. Together with his wife, Mary Joy, he has given more than $400 million through the Stead Family Foundation. Their investments have changed lives at the Stead Family Children's Hospital, at the University of Iowa, at Banner Alzheimer's Institute, and across medical research and mental health initiatives worldwide. Jerre is someone who blends business discipline with deep generosity and who believes his job each day is to help great people do great things. Today, we talk about the lessons from decades in leadership and how he's using his expertise to make the world permanently better. This is The Hustle by Hanna. Let's get into it.
Every day when I get up, first thing I do is how do I help great people do great things today? That's my life. Think about all the lives you can help make a difference for. Then a lot of fear of the unknown goes away too, including technology, because eventually you look at it as a tool to help others, great people do great things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped me a lot. Early this morning, I get up still about 3 hours a day. I was stuck in a hospital for 16 days. I'd wake up and I couldn't do anything. It was awful. But the minute I got home, I was back in that model. But I was thinking, and that's my best thinking time. I get up, I say prayers, I meditate, and now can go back and we reviewed all of the companies that we're supporting. And I was thinking, 7 or 8 of them are going to change the world. And that's so exciting. Look, Eric's disease is going to be cured. I look now at the businesses that we're supporting, and we've given a little over 400 million, about 455 million. But we don't give, we invest.
So incredible to do that. And some of the words you mentioned, I've written down: integrity, purpose, faith, people first. The last one, a refusal to compromise on values, and it's everything you just said. I also want to talk about your professional life before you started giving back and how you led companies and maybe a little bit of your journey through that.
As you know, we got married the day we turned 19. 63 years later, here we are. But we went through college together. We had both kids in college, not by plan, but at work. We lived in a 44 by 10-foot trailer. I worked 40 hours a week, carried 18 hours of classes. Mary Joy said it so right. She said, we didn't know what we couldn't do, so we did it. And I've always thought about that. I remember we were talking about that, living in the trailer, because we were living on $3,000 a year. But yet we gifted $250 a year because both of us grew up with that. Our beliefs that we had to do that. When I was graduating from college, I had a lot of job offers because I was a straight-A student and I worked 40 hours and I was married. And we ended up taking the job at Honeywell, and it was so exciting to start. I was going to be in a high talent pool, people that were going to be future leaders. And so I could get to see every department in the company. Sounded great and exciting. I actually turned down jobs with more money because of that. My logic was the more I can learn about everything, the better I'll be. So I still remember June 14th, 1965, July 5th, 1965, they said, you're done. You're now the foreman of the downtown plant and floor. Well, I named good luck. So I'm 22. I told Mary, I went home that night. Think of us having lived for 3.5 years in a 400 square foot trailer, and then now living in a massive 1,100 square foot for us condo. And we were looking to buy a new house, to build a house. And I went home that night and I said, I don't know how this is going to work. Let's wait. So the next day, I had 400 people in that, 3 chefs at once. Turned out I learned, I think I was the 5th person to have that job in 2 years because it was a job that people didn't like. So this was Teamsters Local 1145. They had group leaders, which were also union members, but they were leaders in the organization. and they got, I don't remember, 20 cents an hour more or something. So I got them all together and I said, I have no clue what I need to do. But what I do know is if you tell me what we need to do together, I'll do my best to help you have fun and be successful. And they looked at me like, first of all, I'm 22, right? And they looked at me and I can still remember Vinny Cooley, who was the third shift guy. Years later, I had him working for me way out of the unions. He was the head of the labor relations department for me because he was that good. But I still remember probably by the third week of listening and trying to fix everything they brought up, they started to believe me. And a year later, we won the best performance. It was a program called earned hours. In other words, less hours you use, the more efficient you are to get done the projects you have. And it was so funny. We had twice a week computer running where you had to fill in cards, then send them in to get the schedules back. That was a big deal then. And a huge breakthrough. I figured out with the team, I can still remember this one gal, Shorty was her name, said, we could shortcut a lot of this if we didn't have to worry about this nonsense. So we did that. And that ended up getting spread other places. What I learned, by the way, we went ahead and that was in July. We bought and built a new house and moved in Thanksgiving because I knew we were going to make it. But it was always the same thing. Like Mary Jo had said, if you don't know we can't do it, we'll do it. What you don't know, you can do it. You can believe anything. And so it was clear to me because I'd run survey crews during college. A lot of them were teachers quite a bit older than I. But again, I'd done the same thing in a much smaller, like 10 people. Here I did it with 400. And it was clear to me that treat every person with equal dignity and respect. Ask them to do things that they've never had a chance to do together before. And then spend all your energy helping great people do great things. We moved all over the world with Honeywell. 1985, it was Honeywell's 100th anniversary. I was group executive, come back from living in Europe. Ed Spencer was our CEO, and it was the 100th anniversary of Hanna. So I was chairing a team of people he picked to tell the board where the next 100 years was going to be, which in hindsight's pretty funny because if you think about what's going on from 1985 to 2025, but we did. And when the board approved, and one of the things they approved was acquisitions of some companies to complement Honeywell. One of them happened to be the Square D company, number one in the world for electrical product manufacturing. So I went down to Chicago. We were living in Minneapolis, talked to the CEO at that time, who was an interim CEO at Square D, and asked him, they were public and pretty good company, and said, would you be interested in Honeywell acquiring? He said, absolutely not. I said, okay. So that was that. And I get a call from a guy named Don Clark, CEO of Household International, and he was chair of the executive committee for Square D. And he said, we'd like you to come next time you're in Chicago and talk to us because we want to stay independent, but we really would like you to think about taking the job as CEO. And I said, I love number 3 at Honeywell. Why would I do that? He said, you just come and talk. So the next time I was in Chicago, I did, and there was 3 amazing people. Dave Baker, Frank Morgan, and Don Clark, just 3 great guys. And I'll never forget that day at lunch. Don said, Jerry, what you got to figure out is do you want to be one of the top 3, 4 at Honeywell, or do you want to be number 1 at Square D now? And I remember flying back thinking, never thought about it that way. So got home. I still remember saying to Mary Jo, I think we're going to leave Honeywell. She said, okay. She didn't even ask why. It's just if that was the case. So we did. Went there. We flew down. The interim CEO, Dalton Canal, this wonderful guy in his wife. And he handed me the contract. And I said, I've never had a contract. I don't need one. I trust each other. And he said, well, anything in this document won't change again because we want you. So I looked at it, handed it back to him, and said, we got a deal. Shook hands, and that's how we got started. I've never had a contract in any of the companies I've been a CEO because I believe the only reason you had them, you weren't being a role model for others. The only reason you had them is to protect yourself if you fail, because that's the only thing a contract would really do. So never had them in any of the companies I was, and was very public about it. The second thing I did at Square V that was of consequence, so we made it a great company from a good company. I burned in the parking lot all the policies and procedures. Everybody needs guidelines, but they were weapons. So it was over 400 of them. And I did it as just a lesson.
Do you remember an example?
What happened, there were so many policies and procedures. There was a blue book and a gray book. The gray book was research, development, manufacturing. The blue book was marketing and sales. And that's what it was clear to me there. That's why I bonded them. I said, we're going to have one set and we're going to share them and they're going to be together. And that's what we're going to do as a team. Now, what happened was hilarious. Hindsight, it wasn't hilarious, but someone took a photo of me burning them in the parking lot. And I ended up in Business Week with a young new CEO learns. And some of my older board members, I think, thought I'd lost my mind. But when I explained to them for exactly what you just said, they said, well, we never thought about it that way. And I said, yeah, this is a team. It's got to be a team effort. And the only way we're going to do it is, I remember Charlie Denny was manufacturing R&D. Dick Kagan was sales and marketing. They didn't even like each other because they were taught what happened is resources got spent one side instead of together. And we changed that company like that. And the lesson I had then was, again, every day, how do I surround myself with the very best people? How do I help them be successful and have fun doing it? I always said work is play with the purpose. And I believe we need to do our very best to create that environment. So I did it there and then went on to lead all the other companies over time. What I learned in that 25 years with Honeywell at Square V was amazing about how to lead, be coach. I even gave business cards, head coach, so that people would know that my job was to help you as a team be successful. And then I carried that forward with every company I led. When I got to NCR, 125,000 people working there, and they were losing $260 million a month. I said to Mary Jane, this is a far tougher job than I ever thought I'd have, but I'm going to fix it. I like to grow things. I don't like to cut things. I did both at NCR, an amazing lesson, because I removed 23,000 people over 3 years, promised them we'd do our very best to place every one of them, because not their problem, that was our problem. We created the problem. And I grew in the meantime, the business from 8 billion to 11 billion in that time. Equally importantly, we became very profitable compared to where we've been. But the lesson there was in the first 30 days with customers, listen first outside in, understand what we're doing they like, what they don't like, and what we need to do different. And then parallel that first 30, 60 days, talk to everybody you can touch inside the organization so you'll figure out together what's the best thing you can do. And that one turned out great, worked out great. NCR turned out to be a very good company. That was the toughest one I went through, though, because I realized we fixed things that had to be fixed, but it was so expensive with humans. I mean, we tried our very best to place every one of them. But think about that, 23,000 people around the world. I can remember I told our leadership team and the board, I was going to go every place and personally tell the people. I wanted them to know I'm not going to hide about it. I wanted them to know we'd spend every cent we could to retrain or help them find a job. And we shut a factory down in Germany, southern Germany, and I went there. I felt so bad because it was tough, but I mean, we were hand assembling laptops and in the meantime in Germany, very expensive. So it wasn't going to work. And I still remember that HR guy for Germany told me, he said, you just told people we're going to find jobs for them. I said, we are. We're going to have to. We placed 97% of them in the year,
That's so honorable.
which was so good. It's still so funny. He was selected as the HR top executive in Germany. So it proved the point again, treat every person with dignity and respect. I had made up my mind, though. I hired a great guy to replace me once we fixed most things. I said I never wanted a job again where I had to cut like that. I want to build. So it was funny. When I left there, Jerre had a very strong opinion that I should take a holiday or something. And I said, I got to do one more. It's going to be a great one. I went to Legion and I took it over. It was all software. And I thought that's the future of the world. We had the #1 operating software for systems in the world. We were the only one that could do cross-platforms. This is 1996.
But your mindset is so different. How did they trust you in the beginning?
Yeah, it was very different because they had acquired 3 companies and they were operating with them separately. And I said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to integrate them all. So we're #1 in the world. I told them I'm going to get bigger for operating software than IBM is. That was my goal. Because I always set those goals and work backwards from there. I knew the hardware side backwards with Honeywell and Square D and CR. Square D was the #2 operating company in the world for factory automation. So it was always high technology. So, and a guy named Charles Wanning from Computer Associates CA came and said, I'm going to do a hostile takeover. I'm going to take over the company.
How long had you been there for?
4 months. I still remember him saying, we thought you were just another guy coming on. You're going to get you out of the way because you're going to cause problems for us. And I said, well, I'm not going to do, if you do a hostile takeover, I'll go to war because that's not going to work. And we ended up reaching an agreement. It was so funny. 3 things: no price increase to customers for 2 years, golden parachutes for every one of our employees at Legion, which if you cut them, if Computer Associates cut them, they get a year's salary and bonus, and no integration at the expense of customers on any of our existing products with products that aren't that good. And we reached agreement with it. We were the only operating software company that could do cross-platforms.
And you need that.
Yeah. And so Gerstner was CEO, and I knew him from when he was AT&T board when I was there. Lou called me and he said, we want to buy Legion. I said, that'd be great, but I don't think you're going to be able to because you've got 70% of the market that I've got 20% of. And of course, that's what happened. And we got approval from the government to merge with CA, Computer Associates. But that lesson to me was customers, employees, and shareholders first. Every company, with the exception of Legion, that was able to make it work. That one, I wanted to be there for 3 or 4 years, and I would have made it. We'd have been the best operating software company that was ever created. So that was, to me, a failure against the goal I had.
Your goal.
Yeah. And so it was a great lesson for me, though, because I realized if I was tough enough with the negotiation, I could take care of the customers, I could take care of my people, and I could take care of the shareholders, even though I didn't like doing what I had to do because I owed all of them that. Jerre could tell you by September it was over, done, closed, and I had people coming for job offers all over the world because of the stuff I'd done. But I didn't feel good. I felt satisfied that I did, under the circumstances, the very best I could, but it wasn't where I'd gone. I had a vision of what that was going to be that I never got to take out. I ended up being interim dean of the School of Business at Georgetown for 7 months.
Had you always had this idea to go back to academia?
No, I had done guest lecturing there, and the father, it's a Jesuit school, great one. The guy that was the dean at business had pancreatic cancer, and he asked me if I'd step in because they just needed someone as an interim. He also said, I think you'll help our whole university. So I stepped in. I did brown bag lunches for any professors of any of the Georgetown once a week. And it was a wonderful education for me about 2 things. One, how warped the mind of how most of the professors thought corporations were terrible. CEOs were bad people.
It was a new version of principles and procedures, having to change the way that the people that you worked with thought.
Better said, yeah, it was so fun because we would end up with 80, 90 people at the lunch and just talk. And I learned pretty quick. I'd say, okay, today, what subject with the world of business do you want to talk about? So it was really a great experience. But I promised Mary Joy, because I'd broken the promise kind of with Legion, that I'd take a year off. And so we did. And it was just fun being intern dean and helping people. And I also taught a class, an executive MBA class. That was a great lesson because I had to build the whole thing from scratch. There was no textbook. I mean, I had to do the curriculum, everything. So it was a great lesson. I still have 3 or 4 of the people that were in that class that I still help 30 years later. So I got a call from Mrs. Ingram, and we were actually in Sweden visiting a friend, and her husband had just died. And the guy that was there as the CEO, they wanted to take the company public, and they didn't think Chip had no, which was true, experience. So they wanted me to take the job. And I did, but I promised Mary Joy that I wouldn't be a CEO for a year. So I was a consultant for a couple months. And then I took them public as a CEO. And a couple things that were interesting there. I wanted to prove to the outside world how much I believed in Ingram Micro, because they were an $8 billion company when I took them public. So I took $1 of salary and all the rest was options.
Were you one of the first people to do that?
I was the first. And the fact you could go back and look at the New York Times, they ran a picture of me with the big check behind me for $1, a photo. When I got there, I knew the technology stuff and what was going to be great, but I was fascinated with distribution and services outside. I still remember bringing the top 200 together. Probably that was September of '96, saying we're doing $8 billion. We're going to be a $30 billion company in 4 years. And here's why. And here's what we got to do. That future working backwards. And I think half of them thought I would, maybe 2/3 thought I was crazy. And we did. We did $32 billion in 4.5 years. Fastest growing Fortune 500 company in history. And it was by, again, setting goals, fact-based, and then organizing everything where all my energies were helping great people do great things. 2 critical things happened there. One, Mary Julie fell off our roof here, 25 feet, blew up her right leg, almost died, and had 5 vertebrae fractured. So I was going back and forth between, because it all happened here. I couldn't travel. She had 9 different surgeries. So really, most stressful time for me in my life because she's first. And I was trying to make sure everything was okay with her, as well as leading a really fast growing company. And it worked. We got it done. I was lucky. My youngest brother, who was a professor, was on sabbatical, and he came and stayed with Mary Joy so I could do that. But it changed the way I thought about, honestly, business had been first and she'd always supported me in a wonderful way. Now it was time for business to be second, and I supported her because I almost lost her. So that's when I met your dad, actually, because I'm looking at Ingram Micro and I hear about this guy with Breakpoint, and I thought, I got to put these 2 together. I mean, think what we'll do then. And that's how I met him. I loved what he was doing. I loved the thoughts. It was great to be with him. And he made clear he didn't want me to acquire him. He said, I've got to be bigger, independent. And I said, well, someday we'll see how that plays out. But someday I think the 2 bond together only because then you create a machine that nobody in the world's done or ever will do again.
Outside of him, did people you would coach listen to your ideas and trust everything that you said?
No. And what happened, the more successful I was, even publicly, then the more, you live on success. And so that's what happened. Made a decision at the end of '99. And so I found a guy that fostered and replaced me, Ingram Micro, for 2 years. And I stayed as non-executive chair. And then the guy I'd hired could then take over the company. So we put that all in place then. And I came home. I stepped down end of December 2000, was here. I had been on a lot of public boards then, and a private board that I was on, TBG, Pennsylvania Group. Tisa called me. We were at Thanksgiving, actually, here in the dining room. And he said, Jerry, I need some help. I think things are bad at IHS. And would you take a look at them? I said, of course. So turned out it was bankrupt. And I promised Mary Jo I would be CEO, so I was executive chair. And we had to put that whole thing together. In the meantime, I was still celebrating because it was so fun. Ingram Micro did 31 billion the year I said they do 30. They were up and away. We acquisitions. I couldn't have been prouder of anything. It was so fun to see it all happen. The other thing with Ingram Micro was so interesting. The industry had far more capacity than it needed. And so I knew we were number one in the world. I knew 2 or 3 were going to go bankrupt, maybe 4. 4 actually went bankrupt. So it ended up with Tech Data and us as the 2 giants. And Tech Data tried to buy BrightPoint. And I was hoping don't do that because that wouldn't be good. So I still remember this. The day we publicly announced I was going to step down as CEO of Ingram Micro, your dad called me the next day and he said, I want you to join our board. And I thought the world of your dad. I thought he was a great entrepreneur, very coachable young guy, but I loved the way he thought and acted. So I said, yeah, I'll do that as soon as I get things cleaned up. I can do it. Bob said, you got to help me get through all of this. And that's when I met Bob Midland because he was the outside counsel. And we ended up getting rid of most of that board, having to rebuild it. Then we built that board together. And of course, I was lead independent director and loved every minute of it because your dad, one, I love him as a person, but his attributes were in many ways like mine. And it was just so fun to see him flourish and see what happened. Of course, I laughed at the end of the day when he finally sold Ingram Micro. That was 10 years later. And so it made all the sense in the world. I was on 36 public boards. Every one I was on. And by the way, a question you asked earlier, was there places that just didn't have the right values? 6 of those I left because, again, I had learned a lesson. Don't waste your time on ones that aren't working. Spend your energy on the ones that do. And it turned out to be a really good decision on my part by doing that with 6 of them. They just didn't have the long-term values. I know we did and would with BrightPoint. And it was so fun to help your dad with the acquisitions where, I've done 230 plus acquisitions over my career. IHS, I did 86 of them. And we built a machine that wouldn't quit when I took that over. We took IHS public in November of 2005. When we took that public, market cap was 835 million. When we sold the S&P Global, it was 44 billion.
Wow.
So 835 to 44 billion. Great success for everybody, continued to be. And that was great fun. And then it was clear to me because of all the experience I had with the public world, if we're going to take it public with the stigma of having been a bankrupt company, I had to be the CEO because my track record showed I did that for Heine Thiessen and his family.
What were you coming back to after so much success? Was it the challenge?
I've got 79 people I know of that have been our CEOs that have worked for me. And that's the dream. That's a dream I've always had, to see our values like you have and I have, multiply 100 times over.
And then the next person becomes the coach. What about making the switch from corporate to focusing on philanthropy?
Philanthropy all the way. Mary Jo did a huge amount of it, but no, all the way we gave, again, invested.
That's a really important part. Like you said, you took your business principles into your philanthropic giving and focused on investments instead of donations.
The other thing strong opinion on, a lot of nonprofits want the 10 million to put away in the bank and then they use 5% earnings a year or interest a year. I never believed doing that. I believed in if I'm going to finance you as a nonprofit and your growth, I'll pay every year what you need so we can make it successful. It gets the handcuffs off. Instead of being stuck at a 5% level, maybe you need to grow, maybe you need 5 million 1 year and 2 million next. So that's what I did almost every one of the nonprofits. I'm a huge believer in that. Then you've got annual targets, you've got annual performance reviews, and you've got a chance to demonstrate great success and growth in the nonprofit world, just like the for-profit.
Is there one specific philanthropic investment that made an impact beyond what you could have imagined?
It was the University of Iowa, the Stead Scholars and the medical school, and provided funding for 4 scholars each year, $135,000 apiece, and they got 3 years of that, so $400,000 on new projects, and that's become a model that's used almost every place today. I was just on last week with the gal that now runs the University of Iowa Hospital's medical school and research. And Denise and I were talking about it because that's changed the game entirely. She now can attract professors and stay there forever. And Iowa City, because the Stead Scholar Program allowed them to do something they maybe never get to do elsewhere. And then what happened, because both of our sons were born, Dr. Robley, our very, very dear friend, came in as the head of the operation of the medical school. And he told me his dream was to build a children's hospital there. Of course, we built the Stead Family Children's Hospital. And that was so exciting, one, because the kids were born, both sons were born there. But more exciting to me was a chance to build something, because I'm not a bricks and mortar guy. This was different. This was to create an environment that had never been there. Every room, they're big rooms, because when your child's really sick, you can move into that room, as an example. And we did things that somebody had never done before that are now followed that way. Coincidentally, it was built looking over the University of Iowa football field. And so on the 12th floor, the kids got to go every Saturday. The Wave, which has become famous all over the world, is at the end of the first quarter for every Holmes game. Everybody in the players, the coaches, the referees, everybody turns and waves to the kids.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
It's famous all over the world. 2 college young ladies wrote to me saying, we've got this idea of making the kids feel better, doing free work there at the hospital. So we were really lucky. The head football coach, who's still there, his wife was the president of the Children's Hospital Support Organization. So we talked to her, got it put in place. That was 11 years ago. Now it's famous all over the world. And some Big Ten schools, they even do the Wave, even though they're not at Iowa fields, they do the Wave to the kids. So it makes you feel good. Biggest problem I have is a personal issue, but when I go up there, I feel 70% of these kids have cancer. It's so hard for me because I want them all to be successful, and it breaks my heart. But we're doing everything we can to make it better. But that's the one that has changed the world.
Is that what motivates you to keep giving to medical research?
When you see that, and it's interesting because there's plenty of money being given for cancer, as you know, today. What we've tried to do with that is use the University of Iowa hospitals as an example of sharing all that research instead of you're one pharmaceutical, I one pharmaceutical, and trying to get them to cooperate. We've done that better with the Fresh Start from Bain Alzheimer's Institute. We actually have them coordinating.
Do you bring in aspects of your technology background to help guide their future strategy?
Yeah, you have to. It's a great question. 2 examples. When we started Bain Alzheimer's Institute, we had 3 goals. One was to find a prevention drug before the end of a generation, happens to be next year. 2 was to create the best environment you can possibly create for teaching the patients that have Alzheimer's and their families how to handle it and how to do things. And 3 was to force, to the best of our ability, cooperations with all the pharmaceuticals to beat the drug, beat the disease. And we've been able to do that. Now I can see it other places. We've done almost the same thing now with the ALS, got total cooperation. Because when you think about it, it's crazy. It's part of the world of capitalism, which is good news and bad news. In this case, it was bad news because hundreds of millions were being spent on finding a prevention and cure for Alzheimer's. We're now able to actually have 2 prevention drugs that will come out by this time next year because we got them to cooperate. that changed the world for the better. I was on a plane 3 years ago coming back from Chicago, and a couple were sitting across from me and said, "Are you Jerre Stead?" And I said, "Yeah." They were parents of a couple of kids in College Children's Hospital. And they said, "You're a legacy." And I said, "Well, I hope I'm a living legacy."
Yeah.
Because I got more to get done. But that's actually what it's made me think about is if you earn that right to be a legacy, you want to do it while you're there.
It's your defining goal, and you're working on it in a way that's shaped how it's going to help others be successful in the same way.
It works. Once a week, every Sunday night, just before I go to sleep, I think, what are the 3 things I got to get done this week? And that's not the job stuff. It's above and beyond. And then I measure myself against those.
What do you think that entrepreneurs tend to look past, or why do you think that they fail?
2 things. A lot of founders have brilliant ideas, aren't the kind of leaders that you need to be successful. Bob Lakin was a great example of both. There's very few like him. So what I've learned is that with the founders, if I can help them, because they're great, brilliant people, but if I can get in early enough, I can help them by providing the leadership on the business side that improves their chance of 50% or better of being successful. Flip side is most of them don't like that. So that's it. And I think what happens is, I think we have millions of great ideas that are out there in universities and other places. Because of it, they never get picked up. And the more we teach the founders, entrepreneurial people that you're brilliant, you're special, great people, but surround yourself with people that will help you do the skill set you don't have. And I see that more and more now. We get incoming startups, probably Tiffany and I probably get 10 a week.
Wow.
And
What do you look for?
we look for the idea and then the person. The idea has a glimmer of hope. Then we look at the person and see, because we can build the business, we know how to do that. But most importantly is with the entrepreneur, does he or she really want to make it happen by not holding it and not being willing to let it? And a lot of them, they don't let go. I so want to communicate about great, brilliant entrepreneurs have the trust that they're going to find people that will help them be successful. And I see the reluctance to let go with things as a real downfall versus what it could be. If I can get there and talk to them and demonstrate again, here's all the things we've done, and here's how they're successful, let me help you, then we can do it.
Do you think outside medical innovation and focusing back on technology, the best course of action for entrepreneurs today is to go all in on AI?
And the faster, the better as a tool. The more, the better. Of all the technology stuff, I think of what I've lived through. I mean, I've lived through 3 generations of technology. Every one I thought was more exciting than before. This is by far the biggest breakthrough I've seen. And it's different. Major technology changes are like, this one's like this. It's the most exciting thing I've ever seen. And the more people can embrace it as a positive tool to help make things better, it's so critical. Like I said, I've never seen a curve like this one. If you think about the root laws way back to semiconductors and how they got started and where they are today and how they speed up, that's nothing compared to what's happening today.
I love what you said, and I think that's a great place to end it. Rather than framing it as fear or anxiety of the future, it really is an opportunity for growth in a way that we could have never imagined before.
And again, does it with the speed that we've never had before. So critical. And that's why I always push never more than 3 things at once. Set 3 goals and stick to it.
Thank you. This has been a wealth of knowledge.
To see you.
It's so great to see you, Chip.
So proud of you.
Thank you.